All right, good afternoon. Appreciate everyone coming out this afternoon. We have some announcements that we're going to make. I'll start out, and then I'll hand it over to U.S. Attorney Roger Handberg, who will also then turn it over to Attorney Brian Haas, and then Sheriff Judd will speak as well. Also behind me, I have Richard Coase, who's the acting special agent in charge of ATF, the Tampa field office. I have David Walker, special agent in charge of the FBI, the Tampa field office, and the SAC, Mark Brutnell, who's a special agent in charge of FDLE Tampa operations. So appreciate their being here today. Appreciate the cooperation that we've received from them. I will comment before I get into the timeline. We have some updates on the shooting. Obviously, we've had two press conferences before on this, and we have some updates to provide you today. We also have some announcements to make as well. So, but I do, before I get started, wanted to thank the U.S. Attorney's Office, our federal partners with the FBI, the ATF, state partners, the FDLE, Brian Haas and the State Attorney's Office, and particularly Sheriff Judd for their help and cooperation in helping us bring this investigation to a successful conclusion. It's been a long two weeks, a little over 2 weeks since the shooting occurred. There's been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, a lot of investigation, a lot of man hours. Over 50 search warrants have been served. Thousands of pieces of evidence have been processed. We've flown evidence all over the country to be processed. So I want to thank personally the individuals and the men and the men and women standing behind me and behind the scenes that have done a lot of work in the lab, all the crime scene technicians, all the detectives, all the people that have done that. So having said that, I want to go down a real brief timeline with you. As you know, January 30th is when the shooting occurred, around 4 o'clock on North Iowa Avenue in Plum. We had a total of 11 victims, 2 that were critically hurt. Those 2 still remain in the hospital. One is in Lakeland Regional Medical, and the other one is in Tampa General. The car that was used in the shooting was located the following day on January 31st. We seized that vehicle. Also on February 1st, the next day, we arrested a Booker Green, age 26. He was charged with tampering with evidence. He's an adult. We charged him with a felony, and I will tell you that his activity or his involvement in this was he was tasked with getting rid of the vehicle. On February 6th, we located Alex Green in Eagle Lake in Winter Haven, and I'll let the sheriff discuss that. That was the event that happened in Winter Haven down Havendale Boulevard. I would tell you that at the time I told you that Alex's involvement was, he was connected with the investigation. I'll tell you that connection is our information is that he provided the weapons and modified the weapons that were used in the shooting. On February 7th, we located another individual and arrested him. He is the one being charged federally, and I'll let the U.S. Attorney talk about that and the charges and give you the identity of that. On February 9th, we located another individual, an adult. These are both adults. That's also the second individual that's being charged federally, and I'll let the U.S. Attorney talk about that. We've arrested one more individual who is 15 years of age on February 9th. He is a juvenile. We feel like he was also involved in the shooting. We feel like he was in the vehicle at the time. We feel fairly confident that, well, we feel very confident that he was also one that was in the vehicle. I will tell you that we have everyone identified that was in the vehicle at the time. We feel like there was certainly a possibility of as many as 5 people were in the vehicle at the time of the shooting. The victims ranged from the ages of 22 to 39. The 22-year-old remains hospitalized, and the 29-year-old remains hospitalized. Everyone else has been released. We have 2 people that are persons of interest that I would like to show you. They are I'm identifying them as a name of Brent Johnson. This is someone that we would like to interview and locate. We have no criminal charges on him. However, we would like to interview him, and we would like to have him come in and speak with us. We are also interested in locating Marquez Green as a person of interest. This is someone else that we would like to interview. So we would ask for the public's help locating those two individuals. We believe one may be staying in Bartow, and the other one, we're not really sure where he's at, possibly in Lakeland. And with that, I will point out the map to the side over here. This is the course of events that we think the vehicle took after the shooting occurred. You can see that it went east on the boulevard, and then at some point made its way to Westlake Parker Drive, traveled around the lake, and we located the vehicle on Baird Avenue. And we have certainly digital and forensic evidence to back that up, and I'll leave it at that. So with that, there will be some questions. We will be glad to answer questions after everybody's had an opportunity to speak. I will turn it over to the U.S. Attorney. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Taylor, for bringing us here together today to talk about this important case. On January 30th, 11 people were victims of a drive-by shooting in the area of Iowa Avenue and Plum Street in Lakeland. The shooting was a tragic event with victims rushed to local hospitals for emergency care. Ever since I heard about the shooting, my heart has been with the victims. I've kept them in my thoughts and prayers. I'm here today to report that 2 defendants have now been charged in federal court in connection with the mass shooting. The first, Nicholas Quinton Hansen, was charged by federal criminal complaint on February 6th, which was just a week after the shooting. And 3 days after that, a federal grand jury on February 9th indicted Hansen and another defendant, Marcus DeJuan Mobley Jr. Both of these defendants are charged with being convicted felons who, in the case of Hansen, possessed ammunition, and in the case of Mobley, possessed a firearm and ammunition. Their charges are pending in federal court in Tampa. Hansen had his initial appearance in Tampa federal court last Friday, February 10th. He had a detention hearing and has been ordered detained pending trial. Mobley had his initial appearance in Tampa federal court this past Monday. He had his detention hearing and he's been ordered detained pending trial. The allegations contained in the criminal complaint and the indictment, which I've just summarized, are just that, they're allegations. And Hansen and Mobley are presumed innocent until proven guilty. The federal charges in this case are serious. Each defendant is facing up to 15 years in federal prison. The quick work in charging these 2 defendants is due to the excellent coordination and teamwork by the agencies you see here before you today. The Lakeland Police Department, the Polk County Sheriff's Office, the State Attorney's Office, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Each of them began working on this case immediately. This case was a top priority for each of these agencies, as well as my office. It was all hands on deck, with each agency committed to working together to do justice for the victims, to hold the perpetrators accountable for their offenses, and to prevent any further shootings from occurring. The investigators on this case have done an excellent job of conducting a thorough and meticulous investigation. You heard Chief Taylor talk about some of the investigative steps that have been taken. The investigators in this case, as you've heard, methodically collected and reviewed the evidence, and they followed up on each and every lead. Every step of the way, the investigators have sought to ensure that those who are criminally responsible are going to be held accountable. And their work is not done. This investigation is a continuing one. Everyone involved in this investigation is committed to following the facts where they lead. And they have my commitment as the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida that my office will pursue federal charges whenever the facts, evidence, and law support them. and I know they've received that same commitment from State Attorney Haas and the excellent prosecutors in his office. It has been a true team effort. The teamwork and collaboration and coordination that led to the federal charges of these two defendants is just the start of things to come. As the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Florida, I am the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for 35 counties in Florida. My office is part of the United States Department of Justice. The attorneys in my office are federal prosecutors. All of us live in this district doing the work of the Justice Department and serving the people in the 35 counties covered by the Middle District of Florida. In addition to prosecuting cases in federal court, my office partners with our sheriff's offices, police departments, state attorneys, Attorney General's office, and state and federal law enforcement agencies to identify the most pressing violent crime problems in a community and develop comprehensive solutions to address them. In a couple moments, Sheriff Judd and State Attorney Haas are going to announce the formation of a gang task force that will be focused on investigating and prosecuting groups in Polk County that engage in violence, especially drive-by shootings. I commend Sheriff Judd, State Attorney Haas, Attorney General Ashley Moody, who supports this effort, and Chief Taylor for their leadership on this important effort. This task force is going to bring together members from each of the agencies you see before you today and several others. It will be built on a model that all of our agencies have effectively used in the past to address violent crime, which is to have close collaboration between investigators and prosecutors. On a regular basis, federal prosecutors from my office, assistant state attorneys from the state attorney's office, and assistant statewide prosecutors from the Florida Attorney General's office, they're going to meet with investigators on the task force to review cases for potential prosecution. In identifying those cases, the task force is going to use the best available information so that we can focus our efforts narrowly on the most violent offenders. And once we've identified those violent offenders, the task force will use every available statutory tool to dismantle violent groups here in Polk County. The federal charges in the Hansen and Mobley cases are a perfect example of what you can expect to see in terms of the close coordination and teamwork and what those efforts will yield. You should expect to see methodical investigations resulting in timely charges that will serve to protect the community, promote public safety, reduce violent crime, do justice for the victims, and hold perpetrators accountable for their crimes. I want to commend the Lakeland Police Department, the Polk County Sheriff's Office, FDLE, ATF, and FBI for their excellent work on the two cases that have been charged in federal court. I also want to thank them, Attorney General Moody, and State Attorney Haas for giving my office the opportunity to participate in the task force with them. As can be seen by the agencies here at this press conference today, and by our pledge to work together on the new task force, all of us, every single one of us, local, state, and federal, we are all united together in our mission to keep this community safe. I'm now going to turn it over to State Attorney Brian Haas.
Thank you, U.S. Attorney Handberg. I think when we all remember our first reaction when we heard about this shooting a few weeks back in the end of January, we obviously were all concerned about the victims and what was going to happen. And I think we all thought about our community, our city, and what does this mean and what are we going to do about it? So obviously there were a lot of different people that sprung into action immediately, and I think today's presence is very indicative of that. I can't recall a time where we've had such great partnership with so many different agencies. This isn't just a Lakeland problem. This isn't a Polk County problem. It's our whole community. The criminals don't know boundaries to jurisdictions, which is why it's so important that we're all working together in this. And we're going to continue to do that. And to have the U.S. Attorney come here and make the announcements and his involvement that he's had, I think speaks very highly of his
dedication to helping keep our community safe. So from my office's perspective, we are continuing to evaluate the evidence in the case, and as additional evidence is brought forward, we will bring whatever charges we feel that we have the ability to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Right now, I think the federal charges are completely appropriate. We support that, and we will do whatever we can to help in that effort. We have the prosecution of the juvenile case that Chief Taylor mentioned, and that's Christian Fennell. He's 15 years old. We believe him to be in the vehicle that was doing the shooting on that day. And so the case that we have going with him, the charge of a delinquent in possession of ammunition, that's a second-degree felony, and we also have an additional charge of delinquent in possession of a firearm, and that's a first-degree felony because there is a gang enhancement with that charge as well. So those are being handled in the prosecution in Bartow, and we'll certainly keep you up to date on those. We have other state charges with some of the folks that are involved. We have an active case against Booker Green and then also Marcus Mobley, but we are certainly going to let the federal charges handle that. They have the best ability to handle that with all the evidence that we have right now. So Sheriff Judd is going to speak in a few minutes about this task force that I'm very excited about. I think it's going to be a great thing for our community, and it's clear that it's needed, and I don't think anybody can dispute that. So what it's going to be is everyone working together, and from my perspective, our community deserves to be safe, and it's not just about the victims, it's not the people that were shot that day, it's about everyone here feeling safe and not having to worry about their family members out, whether it's getting off a school bus or just going about their daily business. And that's why we've got to work together across jurisdictional lines and make this work. So I will turn it over to Sheriff Judd now and be available for any questions afterwards. Sheriff.
It is truly my honor to be here with you once again today as we give you a little historical perspective. We started a task force, a gang investigative task force last year because we saw an uptick in gang-related shootings and drive-by shootings. And to put this in perspective, it's important to understand in 2017 we had 2, 2018 we had 4, 2019 we had 6, last year we had 59. So we began this task force and we made some significant arrests. In addition to that, we currently in our organized crime unit are working on historic racketeering investigations with the state attorney's office, with Mr. Haas. That's right. There are people that are going to watch your news program and think, well, I got away with this in the past. Oh, maybe you didn't, because racketeering takes in past criminal conduct. And we have all of you that are involved in this under investigation right now. So pack up your bags, get your favorite pillow. We're going to put you in jail. We're not going to have this. Now, 2 weeks ago, there was a shooting in the city of Lakeland. The community was outraged. The police department, which is simply an awesome police department, immediately jumped into action and started their investigation. And they were joined, as you can see, by every level of law enforcement, from local to county to state to federal. That's what we do best. We work together to keep the community safe. Because the people that live in the city of Lakeland are not only protected by a great police department, but the people in the city of Lakeland elect the sheriff. I am as much their police agency as the police department is. And we're going to do everything we can, as we always have, in cooperation to make sure that we assist whenever the police department needs assistance to keep everyone safe. Now, prior to this shooting 2 weeks ago, Mr. Haas and I had a conversation, and I explained to him that I'm having lunch with Roger Handberg, who's our new U.S. Attorney for the Middle District. And what did he think about us working together with the U.S. Attorney's Office so that we could try these perpetrators either in state court or federal court, whichever court was the most conducive, whichever laws were the most conducive. Our state attorney, and I can tell you, I've worked with state attorneys not only across this state as president of the Major County or the Florida Sheriff's Association president, but across this nation, and Brian Haas is simply the best. Roger immediately said, U.S. Attorney's Office is on board. It's all about keeping the community safe and protecting people. So as we stood down just before Christmas, the gang task force, we contacted our colleagues from the police departments and the state government, and here's what you're going to see. What's remarkable about this, it is the first time in the history of Polk County that we all, I mean from the U.S. Attorney to the State Attorney to the Attorney General, I talked to Ashley Moody yesterday, she said, count me in. All of us from the top to all the police departments, 100% of the police departments in the county said, let me in on this task force. Florida Department of Law Enforcement is in on the task force. If this doesn't send a message to the criminals that those of you who want to do drive-by shootings, that enjoy drive-by shootings, that are thinking about drive-by shootings, we're coming after you. That's right, after you. You're not going to shoot up our community. The hardworking people, whether it be in the city of Lakeland or any of these other cities or in the unincorporated area, deserve to be safe, and they are safe. Our crime is at a 51-year low now, despite this outrageous conduct by recognizably a few people. It's important to understand that this is kids shooting kids, and we're not going to accept that. We're not going to allow that. If it takes keeping kids locked up to keep them from shooting, we will. If it takes the other side of the gang locked up to keep from being shot, we will. Because at the end of the day, one of the issues that we've all faced is these gangbangers shoot back and forth. They think it's really cool, and then they don't testify against each other. Well, we like your testimony, but we don't need it, and we're going to prove that to you. We're going to lock you up. Now, at the end of the day, we know it's gang retaliation, but they're not just shooting at each other. They're shooting innocent people in the neighborhood. And I want to give you one example. Just outside of the city of Lake Wales, that's right, we had 3 juveniles shot in 15 minutes. Did you hear what it said? In the middle of the night. 2 girls, 12 and 15, in bed asleep, were shot by a drive-by shooter. Oh, did I mention to you that they were sleeping sideways in the bed, and that's why they're alive today? Had they been sleeping conventionally, the bullets that came through the headboards would have certainly struck them in the head. And 15 minutes later, there was another shooting of a 17-year-old girl. Where was she when she was shot? She was in bed asleep. That's right. And in one of the 2 shootings, they shot up the neighbor's house. They shot the wrong target's house. The gangbanger that they thought they were shooting up was next door. We're investigating all of these. And we have the power of the Attorney General of the state of Florida, United States Attorney General, all of our federal partners. And if you don't think ATF hasn't worked miracles on this case, it was all hands on for the city of Lakeland and the people there. So at the end of the day, folks, even though crime's at a 51-year low, even though the overwhelming majority of the people in this county are safe, guess what? The gangbangers are going to be safe from being shot at by each other. And oh, by the way, we've already gone out into the community where we've identified the parents and the family of the gangbangers and told them, We don't want your child shot. And we're going to do everything we can to keep them safe. If you don't keep them home, we're going to give them a home at Grady home. It's called the county jail because we're not going to allow your child to be shot up. So we've worked with the community, we've educated the community, we've talked to the parents of some of these gangbangers, and now they can see clearly everyone, every investigative agency, every police agency that is in process and working to keep you safe are all working on this task force. We will have our organizational meeting at the first of the week, where I will make special deputies of the city police officers so they have jurisdiction in the counties as well, in the unincorporated county as well as in the cities. We'll work with teams, and we will bring these active shooters under control. That's a guarantee.
All right, we'll stand for questions. If you have questions, we'll certainly do our best to answer them. So,
You got to talk about the charges that these suspects are facing federally. Are they facing charges directly, locally, in connection with those shootings that happened on the 30th?
yes, there are. We do have local charges as well that they will be facing. Obviously, the federal charges is what they're in prison for right now, or what they're in jail, and what they're going through their first appearances for. But yes, to answer your question, there are some local charges as well.
When could we see those charges filed?
We'll get that to you. We have some additional forensic work that we need to do. There are also some digital evidence that we're still getting those things in every single day. And what I'm telling you today, within 2 weeks, will have additional information. Now, I'm not going to gather all you guys back together again for this, but we will have additional information on that, and then we can release that to you. So,
Chief, are you able to be specific at this point as to what the motive for these shootings were, beyond just gangbanger was gangbanger? What was going on here that they were going after each other for?
we have a couple different operating theories on that. We had one last week that we felt like it was a failure to pay a drug debt, and I think that we're very confident that's exactly what it was. We think the individual that we were involved in last week in Winter Haven, that Captain Harper ended up having to take lethal action on, we think that he may have been in a situation where he was owed a drug debt and requested some of the individuals that did the shooting to conduct this drive-by shooting in retaliation for the monies that he was owed.
Can you explain at all when it comes to I don't know how much you can get into, but when it comes to that vehicle that was recovered, there was evidently some damage to that vehicle. Was that from the shots being fired, or were there other reasons that car was, where there was damage found on that car?
I'm not aware of any damage that was found on the car. The car was on a rollback record when the officers located the vehicle parked off of 8th Street, I believe it was. And it matched the description of the vehicle that I had held the picture up the day before and given you the photograph of, that was taken from a Ring doorbell camera. The officer saw that it matched the description and just said, hey, this looks like the vehicle, and sure enough, it turned out to be. I will tell you that we found evidence on that vehicle, DNA evidence on that vehicle that we and that produced the charges that we have today. There was the owner of the vehicle also went to jail. I will tell you that is Mr. Mobley. He's the registered owner of the vehicle, and he was the one that arranged to have the vehicle transported. He was in the process, and the reason it was on a record was he had asked the gentleman that we arrested also to take it to a junkyard to be junked, to be destroyed. So we caught it just in time.
Chief, is it your belief that these two were the shooters, and if so, are there any other shooters out there?
We are very confident that the two that are in federal custody were involved in the shooting. There's some indication that we have additional folks that we would like to lay our hands on. Obviously, persons of interest that I showed you some photographs of. Those are folks that we would like to interview as well. Whether their level of involvement in the shooting, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that yet.
Chief, you said that there could be 4, possibly 5 people that were in the car at the time of the drive-by.
Yes, we believe that to be correct. Yes, sir.
Can you get more specific? Do you know if there were 4 or 5 people, and of them there was a juvenile in the car as well, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we believe the juvenile was in the car, and we believe there were 5 people in the car. 2 people in the front seat and 3 people in the back.
Of which the juvenile was one of.
Yes.
And are you sure that at this point, everyone that you believe is involved, with the exception of the 2 people of interest, that you have everyone in your sights that was involved in this incident?
I think that would be a correct statement, yes, yes.
Is it going to be difficult to determine who fired which guns and which bullets, and in order to, place charges on them, you're going to have to pinpoint each individual shooter or each individual person?
I don't know that we'll ever
be a collective situation where they're all in the car possessing guns and that's enough.
Sure. There were quite a few casings on the street. We've recovered probably upwards over 10 handguns. Of all those, seems like everyone that we've arrested has at least 1 handgun and some multiple. I think some of them had like up to 6 handguns. So that's going to be difficult, although our partners with ATF have done a tremendous job. The sheriff mentioned the job that their lab folks have done, and with ATF and FDLE. I can't say enough good things about them, and with the FBI as well. But it's going to be difficult. We may have some of the handguns. I don't think we have them all. We are still missing some of the handguns.
Sure.
Do some of the shell casings indicate that a rifle was used, and if so, what?
There were some .223 rounds, I believe, on the street, but the majority of them were 9mm and .40 caliber.
So there was a rifle used?
Yeah, a .223 would be a AR type rifle or an AK type rifle. I can't tell you if that was old, had been there before, or if it was actually from this shooting. That's unknowable. So.
Sure. Are you able to characterize, if you can, obviously you're on top of all sorts of crime here in Polk County, are you able to, put words to this one? Is this a turning point when it comes to the county? I mean, how significant of an event is it when you have 11 people shot and now we have this task force coming on? Just characterize that for us.
Well, first and foremost, to have 11 people shot is horrible. And the police department took it that way. They were immediately engaged. They put all of their resources on that investigation. They called in specialty investigators from ATF, from FDLE. We all assisted them. And at the end of the day, I guess this is the pinnacle where we have been fighting these cases in the different cities and in the unincorporated area. And everyone that has authority has said, enough. We're all going to pool all of our resources. We're going to present our cases to both the U.S. attorney and the state attorney, and they will decide when and where it's best to prosecute when we bring the cases to them. And I can't speak well enough of Roger Handberg, our U.S. attorney, and Brian Haas, our state attorney. They sat down, we had lunch, and we worked on a plan so that we can make sure that we are totally effective in order to keep the people of Polk County safe. People who live in the communities where the gangbangers have a right not to have their house shot up. And we are going to do everything we can to hold every one of them accountable. And I'll underscore here, ATF and their labs are going to be very critical in our investigative process. They are remarkable. The FBI has always been there and will support us. FDLE is like our best brother that we investigate cases with them every day. But we are all gathered together on these active shooters, and specifically these drive-by shooters where these little gangbangers are shooting at each other. And so at the end of the day, think about it, 11 people shot. It's by the grace of God that you don't have 11 people dead. And fortunately, I believe 2 are still recovering in the hospital. It appears that they're all going to recover.
Sheriff, with the new task force, are we talking about more boots on the ground? Are we talking about more resources getting out to the young people? Kind of give us a sense of exactly what this task force you hope it will.
Sure. I think I would call it the coordination of the boots on the ground. Instead of looking at these as individual events, we're going to look at them collectively. And we are moving resources from other investigations and to work solely on these investigations. So some nights they may be out on the street dealing with active intelligence. Other days, they may be sitting behind computer terminals and linking criminal conduct together for long-term historical arrest. But we need help. The community can help us and bring this to a close sooner rather than later. Listen, folks, it's not a great number of people doing this, but it's a persistent few that are doing it over and over and over, and we're sending them away. If you remember, just recently I met with you, that we worked, along with FDLE and our partners, we worked a T3, a wire intercept, and we brought the entire hierarchy of sex, money, murder gang down. And in fact, we're still chasing one of those folks that are running between Miami and South Carolina. The marshals are helping us. Enjoy your breath of freedom, because we're going to find you. So we've worked on these gangs, and we annihilated the hierarchy of sex, money, murder throughout the state of Florida with our recent T3. We're just adding those resources and bringing more resources to bear. And even the smallest agencies, which I've got to tell you quite honestly, don't have a spare person, said, we'll figure it out. We want to be a part of it too. 100% of the police departments, the sheriff's office, FDLE, our federal partners, everybody, for the first time that I'm aware of in the history that I've been there, and I can talk a lot about long histories in law enforcement in this county. The first time we're all on board, unified about a specific topic, and that's where we are.
Chief or Mr. Haas, I'm not aware, but it seems like there's attempted murder charges or something missing here. Are those some of the charges that are being considered?
Obviously, we need facts, we need cooperating witnesses, we need evidence to support any charge that we bring. So the charges you mentioned would certainly be a possibility and I think appropriate, but we've got to have the evidence to back it up. So that's why this is not over, it's just beginning. And we're going to continue to need the investigation to go forward, but we need the help of the community. We need the help of people who were there, were even maybe shot, to cooperate and let the criminal justice system take care of the situation rather than doing it on their own. That's not the appropriate response. So certainly we hope to be able to bring those types of charges in the future.
For the sheriff, for the chief, you said that this is gang related and you're now talking about the creation of a gang task force. Can you give some details on what evidence or what about this?
Sure. We don't talk about specific evidence, but we have information, and that's why, other than the sex, money, murder gang, you've not heard me call these gangs out by name, but this is gangs, warring gangs over drug debts or girlfriends or money or failure to pay or we're angry with you. One of these violent episodes began about 4 years ago when a gang member died up in Apopka, Florida. He drowned. He simply drowned. And after his passing, of course, they had the funeral and he was buried. An opposing gang went to his grave and danced on it while they took a video and put this out on social media. Well, it doesn't take a gang member to be mad about that. But you can imagine when a gang member gets mad about that with a gun, they're going to start shooting. So we had a gang faction that started warring with another one. One young man was shot and killed in Haines City. And then there was drive-by shootings in Winter Haven. And this has spread all across the county. And it's for whatever reason, instead of settling it with an argument or a fist fight, they're settling it with guns. Well, we're going to settle it with a law and put them in jail and prison because we're not going to allow them to fuss back and forth. But I don't like to market for them, and that's what I would be doing if I use the gang names.
Can you tell us if these are larger national or international gangs?
Well, some of them all claim to be attached to the National Blood or the Crips. The reality of it is most of them are local gangs. Sex, Money, Murder is a national gang. That was a big-time gang, and that is no secret. But these others have affiliations, or at least they claim to have affiliations. And some of them are neighborhood groups of just really mean people that don't mind killing you and then thinking about it tomorrow.
I have a couple of questions for the chief.
Sure.
Please. Are the two greens in this, are they related?
They are not, no. One is spelled with an E on the end of his name, and the other, I actually think there's 3 Greens in this.
A couple of years ago, Lakeland Police had a gang task force that
We did,
was
yes.
disbanded.
Wasn't disbanded, it was just repurposed. We actually call it the Community Engagement Task Force now. So we thought that was more appropriate since the gang shootings had really died off, and we still wanted to keep the task force together. So we just repurposed it, and it's still Chief Tarver is the one that oversees that now.
So you've only been the chief a couple of months. Is it kind of a new day in Lakeland Police?
Well, I don't know. I think anybody that has this job obviously takes all these incidents very serious. It's just, as the sheriff mentioned, this is the first time we've had 11 people shot that I'm aware of. He's been doing it longer than me. I've been here 34 years, and he's been here longer than me. But I can't remember that many of people being shot in one incident ever. And I think whoever was sitting in that chief's job would certainly take that very seriously. And what I would tell you is that, and you can see by the number of people standing behind me and all the men and women in the back of the room, if these folks that were involved in the shooting wanted our attention, they have our attention.
I have another question that just went out of my head.
I wanted to dovetail off of you about what was the former gang task force. When
Yes.
was it changed over to the?
We did it about a year ago, I believe it was. Yeah, about a little over a year ago. We thought that was more appropriate because we weren't having the maybe 2 years ago is when we did that. Yeah, it was chaired by former Commissioner Walker, and then we have actually transitioned that. And they still meet once a month or once a quarter, I believe. Yeah.
Do you see this kind of molding into this larger task force?
I don't think so. I think we're happy with where it's at right now. And my recommendation, and certainly we can look into that. My recommendation is we just leave it where it's at right now.
Okay. And what was that engagement task force?
That was just involving local pastors, community leaders, police department, people from the city of Lakeland, just stakeholders that were in the various neighborhoods to kind of go out and do some neighborhood cleanups and just basically take care of the community.
So it can augment what
Yes, sir, absolutely. And I think we'll still do that. That mission hasn't changed. So.
Chief, I was going to ask quickly, with the gang task force kind of, I think you said being repurposed, the sheriff indicated there's been a rise in gang activity in Polk County.
Yeah, I think they're 2 separate missions. They're 2 separate missions.
Did you see a rise in Lakeland or a drop off that caused that repurposing?
Yeah, I think there was a reduction in the shootings. We weren't really having that many shootings, as the sheriff talked about. 2019, 2020, then we had COVID hit, so there was a situation where it just, calling something the gang task force when we really didn't have that many gang shootings, we didn't think it was appropriate, so we kind of repurposed it. So
it's gangs, but based on 4,178 ounces of marijuana or grams of marijuana in the truck of Alex Green, was this also drug dealing?
it was, yes.
And that's a continuing.
That was certainly a big part of it, yes. And they go hand in hand.
Actually, once again, I'm sorry.
Sure.
When we could see these charges on them was directly associated with the shooting, when could we possibly see those charges?
I think when the evidence comes in, as I said, we're still waiting on some digital evidence, some forensic evidence. We we wanted to make whatever charges we felt comfortable making, and with the U.S. Attorney helping us out, and the FBI and FDLE and the Sheriff's Office jumping right in, and I have to tell you that the day after this happened, obviously it was a very busy day for us. But my phone was ringing from the sheriff calling to FDLE calling to the FBI calling. Everybody saying, what can we do to help? We're here to help. And the U.S. Attorney's Office, he reached out to me within a day or two, and the sheriff has said it, and I'll say it again. We live in a very unique county, and we all get along with each other, and we all are pulling the rope in the same direction. And I'm honored to be associated with all these guys and gals that are standing in the back room. And I'll tell you that a lot of these guys are detectives standing in the back of the room, and they're back there because they don't want to be standing up here. But they were the ones that made this happen. So and I want to give them kudos for all their hard work as well. So when those charges are appropriate, we will certainly bring those forward. So, all right, that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
I think Robin has a picture here.
Yes.
This is a little better photograph of the camera here.
None of the greens are related.
No. There's 3 of them, none at all. That we've been able to find. Yeah.